I just wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about today's sponsor for this Tampon Talk episode. So we've actually had them on the show before. It's the company behind Jubilance. So Jubilance, if you didn't listen to that episode, but you certainly should, it's a PMS emotional support supplement. In peer-reviewed clinical trials, just 1 month of Jubilance significantly relieved PMS-related anxiety, gloominess, irritability, and stress. So I have actually taken this product for a couple of years. I took it through college, so I take it now. It's awesome. My PMS, as you know from listening to this podcast, is horrible. It causes me to lose all my stuff. I get really depressed. Everyone around me has to walk on eggshells because I will cry at the drop of a hat. I mean, that's kind of like normally what I am, but that's why I take it every day. So it's spectacular. It's super easy to get to. It's powered by the patented compound thermally stabilized oxaloacetate, which Alan goes into on the episode, so you can learn a little bit of the science behind that. It's oxaloacetate and vitamin C. So that's it. Like, it's awesome. And like I said, you know, all those different percentages of improvements in PMS related symptoms that was found in the clinical trial, and it's super easy to start today. They have a monthly subscription plan, which is $42 a month, which is really worth the price for the product. So there's a money back guarantee if you're not happy. There's a free PMS science ebook, which we don't know a lot about PMS. So this is some great groundbreaking studies that we've seen positive correlations with this product and PMS related symptoms. It also includes the 30 once daily capsules, which are delivered to your door monthly. And speaking of delivery, it's free. So there's free shipping. You don't even have to worry about that. And it's easy to cancel if you're not happy or if you're going through financial struggles like everybody else. So it's easy to cancel anytime. If you just want the bottle on its own, it's $49, but really the plan to do $42, way better. Like I said, I take it every day. I'm totally open to, you know, answering your questions at the tampontalkmary@gmail.com if you want to learn more about this product. But you can check out the link in the description below, and you can get a discount on the product today. And when you buy through them, you help to make the show possible. So cannot recommend it enough. You should get Jubilance today.
I got Corona on the mic. I gotta go
30
now.
minutes of that.
Looking wild. Anyway, hi.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to Tampon Talk Mary. Welcome to the show that only airs once a month. Quick story. I don't know. I feel like I had a specific moment that happened and I was like, this one for the podcast, and then I forgot it. But this period just made me feel like particularly lethargic, and it was just awful. And I had said this to Preston, but I had noticed that my periods aren't like a full 7 days now. They're 4 miserable days where they're all heavy and then I suddenly stop, but my fertile window is getting bigger.
Interesting.
So okay. I hate that.
Yeah.
So that sucks.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
And I think Preston was like, oh, like why do you think that is? And I was just like, this is normally like in the 50s when, you know, women were popping out babies. Like, this is the prime time for me to be having children.
That's
I feel
true.
like.
Yeah.
But
the body's just like chop.
It does at least help me come to an answer of I can do my periods mean I could easily have children or can't have children at all.
Ooh.
I feel like that I could not tell if this was either really bad or kind of okay.
Yeah.
Both bad all around.
Prime birthing.
Is this
hips
prime
and uterus?
Yeah. I had a teacher in high school tell me I had birth-giving hips, and I was like, I feel like this is sexual.
You do, I can see it.
Listen, Mr. Bergman, you were right. Can confirm.
I just need to say this right now. This is not from a place of harassment or like sexual desire, but just like I acknowledge that. I respect it. Like,
we were fucking looking at like I don't know, like the statues from Egypt of fucking, you know, like fertility, you know, people and stuff, and you'd be like, look, they have big hips, you know. Mary knows what I'm talking about, like birth-giving hips, and I was like, I'm 16, and you're a grown-ass man.
This was like in class?
It was in high school, yeah.
That's so awkward.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who says that?
That guy, I guess.
One time in high school, I had a teacher, and like, he like cheated on a test. And
the teacher cheated?
No, sorry, a student. Sorry, not the teacher. So a student had cheated on a test, and then she, in front of everybody, was all like, "Geez, you're cheating on my test, like just how you cheated on your girlfriend, like and
what?
This guy, like, he was not a nice guy, but like also no one deserves
nobody.
That. Like that was really like this is a grown ass woman. She was like 40 something, and this is like a 16, 17-year-old kid.
Why do you know the details?
Yeah, exactly. Why do you know that? And she was like making jokes about his infidelity, and it's like, not really your place, and not at the time.
Yeah,
to
it's like,
talk
listen,
about
I know
this.
you're working through your divorce and taking it. I know the students
Honestly,
that don't.
yeah.
Awful. Yeah. Well, it wasn't the same teacher, but one that had indirectly called me a cunt in the class as well.
Oh my god.
Where we were going over like. I don't know how he put it into the lesson plan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, this is the teacher that made an argument when we were talking about the Civil War that it was about states' rights. Mm-hmm. And I simply would just raise my hand and say, to do what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he was like, to farm? But it was like, to own slaves.
Yeah.
That's to own slaves.
That's what
happened.
That's what they thought the right was.
Because what was the big difference between the North and the South? Okay. It was like, states' rights.
Yeah.
To own slaves. But that same teacher was like talking about like, I don't know, like why words get their meaning or something. You know, the same teacher that won't acknowledge, you know, racial injustices of the Civul War, was like, yeah, you know, like for example, Mary, I feel like being called a cunt would like really hurt, right?
What?
And I was like, good, still 16, very important. Let me keep this one. Yeah, really weird.
What, you know, I get so mad when like teachers or just anyone who's like an adult like messes up like that. It says like inappropriate things or just like clearly like they're not at a mature level or something.
Yeah.
And it's like really disappointing. But then like now that I'm older and like an adult, I'm like, oh, like I understand. Like people mess up. Like I still feel like I'm 18 a lot of the time. But like, but no, I wouldn't. Like that's so bad though. Like you shouldn't be calling people.
I was like, wait, so like
a student.
And it's like I can't even go home and tell my parents that you called me a cunt because I can't say I'm a cunt at home. You know, like so I can't even explain the situation to my parents. But that teacher, I don't know if he's still there or not. He was recently defending to keep up a statue in Maryland of a Confederate soldier figure. So that guy, that's the one that indirectly called me a cunt. And I was like, I don't know about that. It's a little spicy these days.
No.
But anyway, so I've brought on a dear friend and also comic Sara Litke. Hello.
Hi there. Thanks for having me, Mary.
Well, yeah. Welcome to the show.
I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, this is sick. So we normally do. You kind of talked about it a little bit, but like the segment Tampon Terror, which I want to put like a music thing to be like terror, like some sort of like yeah, some sort of like radio sound effect. But I didn't, you know, this was very. I wanted to do this episode with you for, you know, like I had said it the other time we had hung out, and we were just hanging out today, and then I was like, bro, you want to fucking do this right now? And we were like, let's go. So there was no prep.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you had just an embarrassing period story just on the fly. You certainly don't have to.
Well, see, like I don't know, like I've never had like a hard time with my period. I've had a hard time with getting like comfortable with my body. I do have like one story though, so I will share this. So I come from a very religious family, and in this family, it was often believed that if you used a tampon, that was inappropriate for a woman. Anyway, so I used like pads for like a really long time. Yeah. But I don't know about you, but like with pads, like I just like I had a smell, and I could smell it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, chemical combustion, stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so I was just like, if I can smell it, everyone can smell it. And I was like so uncomfortable, and I would have like these really heavy periods. So I'd just be like sitting in my blood for hours at school. And like, you know, when you're in high school, you can't like go to the bathroom as often as you can. Like you can, but like at the same time, like teachers give you like a hard time about like leaving or being late or something. Right. And like it's just weird. Also, it's high school. So I was like, and like all my friends like were wearing tampons, and so like they were just like, why don't you just wear tampons? And I'm like, I never tried that, you know.
Yeah. So
then I was like, I'm over this. I'm gonna get a tampon and try it. And like I I didn't know where my vagina was, you know. And like
this,
this,
it's not too big. It's
yeah,
the
no,
education
and like this
system,
is
for
why
sure.
like I'm such a big advocate for teaching about like bodily health. You know, like why. Okay, like the women's like private areas is much more complex than a guy. Like a guy can look at what he has, but like we cannot be all like, who's down there? So, but like I remember like I couldn't figure out how to like make it work, how to put it in and stuff, and like I had to watch a YouTube video.
Is it the one with the floaty? Or I don't.
She took a water bottle and that's how she explained it.
Oh.
And like she also drew out how it looked, which like she's a homie. Like she actually drew it out. Like
nice.
Like this is what it looks like, and you have like this hole and this hole and this other hole, and and like I'm like, okay, cool. And so like I literally like took like a mirror once to like see what was down there. That was really weird. And like
but no shame. You should.
No shame. But like it was just weird because I'm like, hey, like
Let the vagina have a monologue.
Yeah,
you know
it was like 16-year-old me, and I'm like, my mom's gonna see me, like like oh no. But like so I like, but I could not get this tampon in, and I was like so frustrated. So I just like eventually gave up, and I just started like jabbing myself with the tampon.
Oh my god!
But then it like boop, like it went in, and like I was like, oh, there it is, and like
locked and loaded.
Yeah, and like and then from then on I knew how it worked, you know.
Oh man.
But like 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 that's like my quote unquote tampon terror. Like it's not really a terror, it's just more like a really awkward moment like that happened. But yeah, like I just remember being like so mad, and I was just like no, like trying to like get it to work.
Poor vagina.
Yeah. That was a long time ago, and now I have upgraded to a cup, so like I don't even have to deal with that anymore, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
very cool. And like the segment doesn't necessarily like have to be about tampons. It could be a period or pad problem, a Diva Cup dilemma. You know, wherever I get the alliteration. But like
like I've had like really easy periods. Like I've been blessed with like in that way. Like
wild. But yeah, I mean, so we kind of got on this topic where we were talking about just the injustices that are perpetuated onto women most of the time, and we're injustice perpetuated on people that I guess that aren't like straight white men, you know, rich straight white men. But something that had come up again that we were talking about in a recent discussion is like the sexism and homophobia and racism that's in the comedy world. That's kind of come up like I don't know, every time a comedian got outed in the Me Too movement, like Bill Cosby, and then everybody was like, Bill Cosby, and like that, how awful that was. And that conversation has come up again with Chris D'Elia. And, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her name. From Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who's married to Jordan Peele. She just did a comedy album.
Christina? No.
It's like Christina Peretti, I think.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
She's phenomenal. She's great. But she was talking about it a lot on Twitter, and the stuff that she had witnessed in doing stand-up or shows where there were men that allowed sexism to happen, or women would no longer get booked at clubs if they had mentioned that guys were being sexist, like in the green room on the way, or like gropey or whatever before women went out for a show. I felt really fortunate because the majority of my comedy world as of right now was like at the Ruby, which we've talked about on the show before, but like having it be like a feminist theater primarily, and then the open mics I feel like revealed what the rest of what the comedy world seemed like. Which is all the sexism and the racism and stuff, but it was always called out at the theater and all that kind of stuff. But even at ESCO, where I was doing stand-up in college, like experiencing sexism.
Oh my gosh.
But I wanted to bring you on because we both have we work in comedy and we're have a lot of the same ambitions in comedy, but just kind of talking about like if you've experienced anything in particular of like people, I don't know, like not thinking you're funny and not giving you a reason why, except for the fact that you're a woman. I don't know, like sometimes sexism isn't that plain and simple, but just like any hurdles that you feel like you're having to go through that maybe like your male counterparts aren't going through.
Well, so like personally, I feel like there is that, like, when you first meet someone, especially, like, when it comes to, like, older men, like, okay, so like a non-weird way to say that. Let me rephrase that. So, personally, when it comes to, like, meeting, like, adults, like, friends of, like, my parents, let's say, or, like, our boss, ex-boss,
Yeah.
you know, like, bless him, he's so great. But, like, there's always, like, that wall where I feel like I can't be, like, weird and, like, do goofy voices, or, like, a lot of the times, like, I also have a problem of, like, speaking before I think, so, like, I'll often, like, make a really inappropriate joke at, like, the really wrong time, and so I've learned to, like, keep myself quiet, more out of, like, respect, not, like, a societal pressure thing, but more just, like, to not be offensive or, like, inappropriate. So, but, like, I remember, like, making, like, a joke in front of him and then just being like, oh no, like just, like, there's, like whenever I make a joke for the first time in front of someone, like, there's always, like, that, like, 2 seconds or, like, 2 milliseconds of, like, fear, and, like, it feels like time slows down and you're just like, what's gonna happen? And then finally they go, like, oh, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, they just chuckle and you're like, okay, I made it, you know? And, like, so I think, like, that kind of goes with, whereas I don't know, like, I feel like a guy has an easier time with being, like, a funny person, whereas girls aren't really allowed to be, like, the class clown or something, or goofy, you know, especially, like, at our age, like, we're getting older, so, like, when I meet someone who's older than me and, like, I'm being, like, goofy, or I'm making, like, jokes or something, or, like, when it's, like, at the workplace, like, I feel like that's gonna make me look like I'm immature or something, which, you know, could be the same for guys, but I just, like, I don't know if that's, like, the way I was brought up by, like, my personal family, or if it's, like, a societal thing that, like, I need to look like a mature grown-up woman. I think I kind of, like, want to also say that, like, maybe there's, like, this pressure of, like, the extreme feminists who aren't really feminists, that are, like, you know, like, I need to be tough and, like, hate men and stuff, and like, you know, like, I need to, like, seem like I got my shit together all the time, but I don't, and that's why I, like, make jokes, because, like, I'm uncomfortable.
Or just, you know, honest.
Or that too, so there's that. When you, like, first asked me about this, am I getting too far away at any point?
No.
Okay.
All right.
So when you first asked me about doing this, the first thing that came to mind is, like, the idea that girls can't be funny, and this has been, like, brought up to me so many times, even by women in my life, young women too, you know. So, for example, I have a friend, her boyfriend was saying that girls can't be funny, and I was like, well, you laugh at my jokes, so what's about that? So, which sucks, you know, like, I don't know why that is. You know what, this is all connecting now. Maybe that's why I feel like I can't be funny, because, like, people are told that girls can't be funny.
On top of the laundry list of things we're told we can't do.
Yeah, exactly. And then someone was saying that they're, like, you can't be funny unless you're quote unquote, like, ugly, like, you don't meet the societal standard for beauty. So, like, someone like Rebel Wilson, for example, she's hilarious, but, like, you know, she doesn't fit that idea of beauty that we have as society. So there's also that theory that, like, you can't be funny unless you're ugly, because then you have nothing else to offer or something. And that's also really messed up. And but someone was telling me that, so, you know, the comedian Eliza Schlesinger?
Yes.
She's hilarious. Now, so she has, like, a lot of, like, stand-up specials on Netflix right now, right? A lot of her stand-up comedy, which is great, you know. And, like, the hard thing about that is that that's based off of, like, her life, and she's a beautiful woman, okay? So, like, her experiences of life are gonna be different from mine as someone who does not look like her.
Oh my god.
You know, it's true. Or, like, even, like, you know, her compared to, like, Rebel, you know, which they're both white, they're both blonde, but, like, just, like, that simple body difference, that's gonna be a different life experience. So, like, someone was saying that she has hot girl humor and therefore she's not funny, or like she cannot be funny outside of that. Yeah. But she did come out with a new sketch comedy show called the Eliza Schlesinger Comedy Sketch Show on Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think I texted you about it.
You sent me the gym sketch.
Yeah.
I forced to keep the keeping men fat or something.
It's like the fat dude workout.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will admit it's not like the funniest shit I've seen, you know? Like I do think there's some to work on, but I think what was so great about that is that I think she gave herself a place to step away from her and her looks, like in that hot girl persona, because she does these characters where she's literally like a creepy fat dude, or like she found a place to like be characters and to do sketch work, which is like what I want to do. And like I feel like maybe she had to use her looks and her humor to like get to a place where she can do what she actually wanted to do. And I feel like her sketch comedy is like, I don't want to say a lot better because it's different. Like stand-up and sketch is a lot different from each other, but I really enjoy her sketch work. And like I said, I think she gets to show a part of herself that's very different from the stand-up. So yeah, there's that. Do I have anything else to say about that? I don't know.
No, but I think I totally agree of there being like, because I don't think that there is a single male comic that has had to experience, oh, you're only funny because you're hot. I think that there's more of,
or because you're ugly.
And then I think there's maybe men that think they're funny because they think that they're hot. But you know, most of the time they aren't. And they're not funny.
Like their humor is like a separate part of them. It's like something about them, not really like because you're fat or ugly, you're funny because you have to compensate, or because, or like you can't be a good comedian, you're only like, you can only be like this much of a comedian or in this aspect because you're hot. And like in particular, like straight white comics do not experience you know, the limitations that other people are experiencing. Like they have the freedom to talk about whatever they want, where like I feel like a lot of like black comics are only limited to, you know, commentary within their own community or, you know, whatever. Or like, you know, gay comics, you know, are only limited to like talking about, you know, their like that kind of thing. I feel like straight white guys don't have to go through that. And like women similarly, like no matter what they talk about, you know, they're usually judged, where it's like, you know, are you fitting into the hot girl category? Are you like ugly and fat category? Or like, are you a comedian that just wants to talk about sex? And then, you know, you're either destroyed by your society because, you know, they're like, oh, you're a woman and you want to talk about sex, you shouldn't talk about that. Or they're glorified because they're only talking about sex. Like there's like no healthy relationship, I think, to any female comic or comedian of color or, you know, a gay comic. That those comedians that even like you and I love, that we were like literally just talking about, like I love you know, people like Dan Aykroyd, you know, like people who are white straight comics who have, you know, thrived and have had a career for years and been able to do whatever they want to do, like fucking, you know, Adam Sandler, like has never really experienced any particular like extreme limitations on his career in the same way that like his female counterparts have. Like in his cast, more people remember Adam Sandler than, you know, the women that, you know, came before and after and during, like, you know, except there's like the giant powerhouses of Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, but you know, even then there are people that, you know, have like set their comedy sucks and stuff. Oh my gosh, like someone who comes to my mind, George Carlin. He's like part of like that early SNL, like seasons 1 through like 6 or something like that, like really early. He's hilarious, and like everything that he says is so relevant to now. But he's also like really, really vulgar, especially for the 70s and the 80s. Like that was not like okay back then. But like comparing that to like what was her name? There's an actress who does this character, Roseanne O'Dana. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I forgot.
Gilda Radner.
Yeah, she's hilarious.
I love Gilda.
Yes, and like I haven't seen everything that she does, so I may be wrong, but I don't see her doing like the same kind of comedy that George is doing. And like, again, those are two different types of comedy, but like he gets the permission to like be loud and raunchy and like criticize society, and it's funny because it's funny, but like everyone, like, as far as I know, no one has been like, oh, like this is inappropriate, like, you know. Whereas like I haven't seen her do any of that. She did like character stuff like on SNL, but I don't know if she ever got like a chance to like be as like loud and upfront about things like George did. You know?
She didn't. Her and Joan something. The other woman in the cast.
I'm forgetting their names.
And this precisely is the problem.
But
But
George Carlin, not a problem, but I can't even remember. You just said it too, and I already forgot.
No, Gilda Radner.
Gilda Radner.
But when the show was in its infancy, that if the male cast members didn't think the women were funny enough, they changed the gender of their characters and kicked them out of the sketch.
Oh my god.
So that's why people like Chevy Chase and John Belushi and even Dan Aykroyd, who I love, like got more screen time, and we know them more because they literally wrote the women out of the sketches. From documentaries and things that I've seen, the only person that was really like defending women on the show that even like Gilda and the other cast members were saying that were female was Dan Aykroyd. That Dan Aykroyd would be like, you know, we need to put more women in sketches and stuff. But Chevy Chase, scum of the earth. I hate Chevy Chase. I think he's a shitbag, and he did a lot of the sexist bullshit. John Belushi, same thing. And then later on, when his cousin Jim Belushi was SNL, he was like, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler aren't funny.
Oh no.
And I was like, I'm sorry, and I think, I don't remember the exact comment that Tina Fey said, but she was like, you're living in the shadow of your cousin, and I'm not fucking funny. And I was like, bro, no one gives a shit about Jim Belushi. No one gives a shit about him. But that was a lot of, so right off the bat, the cast was all straight white males, which is also part of why like Eddie Murphy had a hard time breaking through. Because he has the added challenge of being African American.
And he was so young when he got started.
And he was just doing background on the show. Like, he was being a background actor in sketches and kept begging, like, please get me in there. And then, you know, we fucking, like, where would we be?
They kept saying no,
like, all these like women that have come out of comedy and like that show in particular, like is responsible for a lot of the content that highlights a lot of like white male comics that we really like. Mindy Kaling is greatly responsible for The Office. So like, and every white person that I know loves The Office. So like,
actually that goes right back to what I was saying. That same person, that same guy who was like, girls can't be funny. I don't know if it was me or someone else, but somebody was like, you know, like, you like The Office though. Like, Mindy Kaling was like one of the biggest writers of that show. And like, boy, you watch that, like,
you love The Office.
Yes.
And you know, like Parks and Rec and 30 Rock and like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, like a lot of these shows that are responsible like for women behind the scenes. Like, it's the same. The audience is like, women can't be funny. And
New Girl.
Like, it's wild to me, and that, you know, even opening up this conversation, there's like so much embedded sexism. You know, I think that's probably what we could definitely speak the most to. I mean, there's obviously, you know, great homophobia and racism and all that kind of stuff. There was stuff that I had even seen at a progressive theater where, you know, a trans comic would be doing comedy and like, you know, how they were treated in comparison to, you know, there's just male counterparts, and then it's like, no one should be experiencing that, because I think comedy itself presents it as, these are all the underdogs and the outcasts of society, and this is why like they have commentary about society and why we like them, because they present this like, you know, I'm just your average Joe underdog kind of character. So we love listening to comedians, and you know, but within that community, if like, you know, the underdogs and, you know, the outcasts of now like aren't getting a voice, you know, what are they supposed to do? But yeah, it's like, I don't think well, I mean, definitely in college I was experiencing a lot of sexism related to comedy, of just, you know, well, being one of the only females to do comedy, and then, you know, like your sister is so funny at doing stand-up, but, you know, again faces that challenge of there is these expectations set by women, or set about women, where it makes it even harder for us to
Yeah.
be funny. Like, you could take the exact same material a woman is saying and put it in a man's mouth, and it's more
Yeah.
accepted.
Yeah,
generally.
exactly. Yeah, and talking about like personalities, we were talking about that, like how someone like hi Lisa, like how someone like my sister, and like how she approaches the world, and like how she like does comedy. It's much more in your face and like, you know, like very blunt and stuff.
And that's an attitude more accepted. When a
with
man
a
is
man,
doing it.
like it'd be fine if a guy was doing that, but because it's a woman, it's like, oh, she's a bitch, like like, you know, like who is she to say this, like she doesn't know or something, you know.
And even like when we were talking about the comedian you just said that was like vulgar, but from SNL older days.
Oh, George Carlin.
Yes.
Yeah.
There, and you know, there's always gonna be people that are fucking prudes, you know, that don't like comedy.
Yeah.
But if, you know, like you said earlier, if it's a woman doing that, even those prudes think that that's worse than the prude the person they were already mad at.
Yeah.
So it's like, why?
Yeah.
You know?
You know who I love? I love Ali Wong.
Yeah.
And like the thing that I really like about her is that she gets like really like physical on stage.
Yeah.
And like she's like, she'll get like on her knees. She's like, you know, using her arms, imitating what I think is like the funniest part is that she's in a dress, you know.
Yeah.
So she's like dressed up as like, you know, a very feminine female.
Yeah.
But then she's like hiking up her skirt, you know, to like make a point.
Yeah.
And I love it. You know, I love that shit so much, you know?
Yeah.
What was my point with that? Jeez.
Well, it's also just these things that men have been that we accept men to do that we don't allow women to do.
Yeah.
Molly Shannon paved the way for physical comedy of women on SNL.
Yes.
Ooh, I got to tell her about Tampon Talk when I met her on the street one time.
Molly Shannon, if you're listening, we love you.
Molly Shannon is an absolute delight.
Yes.
She is so wonderful.
Yes.
And I got to say to her, I was like, you've paved the way for me and other comics, you know, and like she
she walked so that we could run.
Yes. And like, you know, like Sally O'Malley is such a physical character, and Mary Catherine Gallagher is such a physical character, and like she was like, you know, why can't the girls do it too? And she's fucking throwing her body around and showing her underwear on fucking, you know, SNL and, you know, daily nighttime TV, and like that's amazing.
Yes, but it's because the women's body is like sexualized so much more than men. Like men, and like that's the other thing. Like something like dick in a box, you know, like that shit. It's like okay because it's funny, even though it's their literal penis, you know. But like if women were to do that, like pussy in a box or something, like people would just be like, oh, that's so inappropriate. Like why are they acting like that? So raunchy and stuff. Like I know I can name you some people who would hate that, you know.
Or comparing, like even just on that literal show. So compare Dick in a Box to Do It in My Twin Bed.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like they're both they're not the same exact like comedic punchline, but we're talking about female sexuality and how that was received versus how Dick in a Box is received. And it's like, you know, I think the Lonely Island, I think they're funny. Like I love those guys, and I think they're great.
Of course.
But like how we received those is completely different. And those, you know, women have it definitely harder. Because that bit was also really funny. But, you know, on top of another thing, you know, we're talking about stigmas all the time on, you know, Tampon Talk, but like a woman's sexuality is completely stigmatized. So that negates us being able to talk about it in comedic commentary. Which is fucking, I mean, we might be just fucking preaching to the choir, but like, you know. But yeah, like this, I think this is a part, I think like, you know, this is part of the many aspects of the Me Too movement. And I had recently got into, it wasn't like a Twitter debate, but someone had, I love Ethan and Gila on HTHC, they're on YouTube. And they have been having this like back and forth with the YouTuber Keemstar, who is just this sexist, awful person. And he was sharing something that was victim blaming a woman for like, you know, why didn't you say no, or all this stuff, and all this kind of like bullshit. And Gila shared just the video of him saying that and being like, this is toxic, we're blaming the victim, and I was like, totally agree. And it was like, the premise of it was he was talking about this like gamer guy who lived in this house with this gamer girl, and like he got really drunk and like waltzed into this woman's room and like was like got in her bed and started, you know, like feeling her up and all this stuff. And then the guy in the video, Keemstar, got hung up on the fact, like, why didn't she just, like, say no to him doing that? And I was like, we're not even gonna talk about this guy just fucking, like, barged into someone's room and did that. Like, that itself is the societal problem. And I had, like, no one cares. Listen, no one cares about your opinion on social media. Let me just say, and that applies to myself. I like had commented on the tweet being like, "Are we not going to talk about that fact?" And had men respond, being like, well, "Why?" And you know, being like, "Okay." Some guy in particular was like, "How are we supposed to know if we're not raping you if you're not saying anything?" And I was like, the fact that you're having that thought, that you couldn't identify if you were raping somebody or not based on the fact that they didn't vocalize it. Like, there's so many situations where they can't vocalize it. It was like, that's the problem. And talking with this person and being like, the problem is that society welcomes and accepts men's sexual advances, whether they are, even if they're unwarranted, that they are always welcomed, and a woman just has to be in defense to that. That's just the societal expectation. So that has completely destroyed how we're talking about a lot of these issues in general. Is that we have accepted that men are supposed to act this way. So that's why it's harder for us to get why women don't want to experience sexism. And this is taught. Racism is taught. Sexism is taught. So it's like having to have this conversation start at home. You know, you shouldn't be asking why, you know, why is this comedian suddenly complaining about sexual abuse? Or why is this person like, you know, not saying no or whatever. It was like, you need to be asking why the situation happened in the first place. Which I do not think we're talking enough about. And this person who I was like talking with online was like, you know, it feels weird that like she's, you know, talking about this when there's actually women getting raped and stuff. And I was like,
Wait, what?
And I was like, that's bad, right? But we need to understand how people become that and condemn the behavior that comes before something too severe.
Get to the root.
So, and then they were like, oh, okay. You know, that totally makes sense, and I think I was perpetuating my own emotions on this, and I was like, probably. But, you know, it's okay. But that instance made me, you know, like, at the same time of seeing all this stuff on Twitter of, like, you know, comedians, like, talking about this again, it's, like, in the same vein, and, like, all different aspects of sexism being discussed under the Me Too movement should be welcomed in their varying degrees, where it's like, well, duh. Rape is bad. Cancer sucks. Like, all these things that are very obvious, but we, like, you know, we need to understand how people get to that point and why we're accepting sexist behavior. Like, why we're accepting sexist comics or bookers and stuff. Like, we're not questioning, like, why they are that way in the first place. And then, you know, preventing that for the future. Wild. Fucking wild.
It's pretty wild.
I think I was trying to think for myself if I was experiencing, like, particular sexism. I mean, I have talked about our college on this show before. Sarah and I both went to the same college, to provide context. Wild. Fucking wild place. And I will publicly talk shit about it. But there was just this small religious sexist community that, you know, that obviously did not represent the majority of society. The majority of society is just, you know, sexist on its own without the religion. But, you know, that having to deal with that pressure and then trying to thrive in this environment as a female comic is, like, even harder. But just generally experiencing just borderline straight up sexism that, like, men could not see, that women and men are equal in any capacity, to then, you know, have this environment and then go outside of my college to go, you know, perform at the mics and try material to deal with just the other type of sexism. So you could be like, oh, this isn't religiously associated or politically associated, it's just everywhere. But I think I generally had a lot of not people necessarily, like, booing me, but there's things that I would talk about where they were, like, raunchy or sexy or whatever, and then coming off the stage and for men being like, that's an invitation.
What?
You know? And you know, I've had, like, Preston came to all my shows and stuff, and you know, I you know, women should be in a position where we can just be as raunchy as men, and not have that be like, oh, okay, that's you go, but you were talking about this, so that means you want my penis, right? And it's like, what? Doesn't make make sense to me.
Yeah.
So it's either that or, you know, you're a woman, you shouldn't be talking about this. I was like, why?
There's no,
I had some guy record my set one time. And, like, he recorded my whole set. And he was like, oh, can I, like, send it to you on Twitter? Like, what's your number? And I was like, this is weird. Yeah. You are a complete stranger. And I'm performing in a comedy club. Like,
no, thank you.
It's great that you've liked it in a certain capacity. But, you know, don't send this.
It's weird.
Who does that?
It's weird.
Who does that?
He was trying to get with you.
It was weird.
Like, in a... Like, maybe he didn't know how to talk to girls kind of way, like...
I think so. And I used to, I would do sets with Tom Zoop, who's, you know, we had Toilet Talk, who has his own podcast, and then Andrew. And we'd all do sets, and I would have them go before me. So having this societal pressure of, like, you know, feeling like, you know, we were all there to, you know, do comedy and support each other, but feeling like I wasn't funny enough to go first.
Yeah.
I remember that being really hard.
And then we're saving the best for last.
And you know, like a lot of times, I'm not gonna say like I performed better, which you know it wasn't true. But you know, I left feeling like I had a pretty good set and had pretty good laughs, but then had to deal with the sexist guy like at the end of it. Yeah. But you know, they didn't experience that.
That's true.
They didn't experience predators after their
girls
sets.
are like coming up to them and being like, hey there, hunky man.
Hey,
like,
hunky donkey.
hunky donkey.
You like my pussy? Like, no.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And having to see how they're... Because sometimes we would be talking about relatively similar stuff and how they were received versus how I was received.
Yeah.
And have that, you know... Again, I'm not trying to be like, I'm the victim, but, you know, like... Yeah. That was a societal expectation, and that's happening to women everywhere. Questioning why, you know, even with us, like why when you think of a comedian or someone you like, a lot of the people you name first are men most of the time, and questioning like why they come to mind. Why are they everywhere for me to have so much access to them and not these female comics that I like? You know, it should almost be effortless to like and follow the female comedians in the same way it is for the men.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, like they should be your hero because of their talent and not because there's like no one else to look up to, you know?
Like, and I think I had this discussion with friends a few weeks ago where we were like, who is this is so dumb. Who's the comic that like white people like the most? And the debate came down to Jerry Seinfeld and Adam Sandler. And I hate Adam Sandler. I do. I was fighting. I think white people fucking love Jerry Seinfeld. White people love Jerry. They love Seinfeld's show. They love Larry David. They love all that white people shit. Stuff like you've heard like the phrase regifting. Yeah. That's from Seinfeld.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like they invented that phrase.
I did not even know that.
There's so many things embedded in our culture that have come from Seinfeld. White people love Seinfeld. Yeah. You know, my friends are making a very convincing argument for Adam Sandler, and I certainly agree. A lot of white men like love Adam Sandler.
Well, okay, like you remember Jean from work?
Oh yeah.
Like when I first met him, he told me that he watched I think it was Kramer versus Kramer. And then I was all like, oh, I didn't realize you were an old white man. Right. And just for reference, he's a young black man. So like he just like died of laughter. He's like, well, it's a good show. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. But we were sitting there and being like, you know, who are our best comedians of all time? Who do we think of? And then we got into like, you know, I don't know who would be like, of all the people that we know who are, the conversation was really revolved around stadium comics. Like who sells out a stadium like no matter what. And trying to figure out what constitutes a stadium comic, and all of them were men that we came up with. So the argument that I made was like, is their humor not necessarily generic enough, but is it widely accepted enough to sell out a stadium?
It is. That's
so
the thing.
Like Kevin Hart,
Dave Chappelle,
Gabriel Iglesias, George Lopez, I guess. Yeah. People that's humor is like, you know, funny enough for everybody to be like, I get with that, but they're all men. So it's like, why is that? Yeah. You know, I think the only people I think that I don't know if they've sold at a stadium or not, but Amy Schumer, I don't know if she's. She's not particularly my cup of tea, I will say.
She's not mine either, yeah.
I'm glad she's successful.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think she constitutes as a stadium comic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
This conversation we had only talked about male comics.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got into, well, who are your favorite comics of all time? And that's when I started naming all these women and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were all naming men, which is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But asking why isn't there equal exposure?
Yeah.
And I think
exactly.
once we answer that,
Yeah.
will the sexism in comedy go away? On top of men being gross or like.
Yeah.
Because the other thing too, South Park did an episode of why there aren't comedy awards. Have you ever seen this before?
No.
So they did an episode where they were making fun of like comedians, and then the concept of why there aren't comedy awards by making in the show they created a comedy awards, and it was disastrous.
Yeah.
Because everyone's head kept exploding because if they're like, if you take comedy seriously, then if you're being serious, it's no longer comedy. So if you get an award because you take comedy seriously, then you're no longer funny. So you don't deserve a comedy award. But the comedy award means that you take comedy seriously. And they kept doing that.
Yeah.
And like all the comics were men, most of the time. But I think that mindset of there's things that we want to talk about in a serious way that exist in the comedy world. That are stigmatized that we can't talk about, because then if you talk about it, you're no longer funny. So like if a woman is coming forward and saying something like, hey, this comedian like fucking groped me and this comedian is fucking gross, now we're getting serious, so they're no longer funny. I feel like so I feel like that's kind of like that's what Christina Pretty what she was talking about on Twitter was like, if she or it was her and like another comic that I knew from the Ruby was talking about if she went to the booker of the comedy club and was like, this guy in the lineup is sexist, the woman that came forward was never invited back to the comedy club again.
Oh my gosh.
But I think that this hinders us from talking about this serious issue because there's this stigma where even so, like I had auditioned for this like comedy rep agency and I got it.
Hey.
Listen, it's just an LA thing where they scam you to get into classes. It's a fucking whole thing. He's like, you're welcome into our comedy registry, and I was like, great. And he's like, if you took a 7-week class with me, and I was like, God, fucking it's LA's biggest fucking scam is not pyramid schemes, it's fucking taking a class. Hate it. But where was I going with that? Just it's still like this guy being like, the women weren't funny or whatever, and that the improvements and just it's that's right. So I was doing he was like, for the audition just do some sort of like like a stand-up piece or a character or whatever, and I was like, great. So I was like, I'm just gonna tell the story that I do in stand-up all the time is of when I met Bill Cosby. And it's funny.
That's a great one.
It's funny because it's true.
Yeah.
Because it literally happened, and the circumstances are fucking wild.
Yeah.
And I had told that story, and he gave me notes on it and stuff, and he was like, yeah, whether the story was like true or not, and I was like, no, it happened. I was like, this actually happened. And he was like, weird, comedians don't normally tell the truth. And I was like, I completely disagree.
That's all that comedy is.
Yeah. But I think that there's a lot of people that think that way. Yeah. Which is also why we can't have this conversation about racism, sexism, and homophobia. Because if those people if they're telling the truth against people that don't want to tell the truth or, aren't telling the truth in comedy, I guess, if that's what this guy thinks, then we'll never get this resolved.
I can see, like, so I do know that there are so many cases where like a comedian makes like a joke, especially when it comes to like what am I trying to say? Blah, 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 blah. Like I recently just watched I think it's the newest Dave Chappelle stand-up special.
The 8-minute and 40s, the one that was the time of the George Floyd.
I think so. Yeah, it's like I think it's his most recent one. And he has this one joke because he's married, you know, and he has a joke about like having like sex or like doing stuff with like a trainee that he met somewhere, and I was like, oh, like that's interesting. And then my sister was like, well, that's not true, like it's just part of the joke. And like I don't know too much about this, so like maybe, and like I can also see this with like his name is escaping me. There's another great comedian who Conan O'Brien. Yeah. So like he makes a lot of like sexual jokes and like what's it called? Like when he's like with somebody, or if he sees someone beautiful, he'll be like, oh, like, you know, like you want to get funky with me or something like that. Yeah. And like he's married and apparently like very Catholic also. Yeah. So like he'll make these jokes and it's like, oh, but like that, it's a lie kind of, because you don't actually do that, and you're married and you're committed, and you know your morals tell you not to cheat or to like hit on women. Yeah. So that's part of the joke. So like I can see how like maybe like lying is kind of like comedy, but like I don't know. But, like,
I mean, I would even argue with Chappelle, Conan O'Brien, and even Colbert. Yeah. That the fact that they're acting so polar opposite reveals the truth. Okay. So I think like Stephen Colbert's like Republican character from the Colbert Report, and you know who he is right now as a host. Him being like so conservative and so ridiculous and committing to this character. Yeah. For just people that got it, how they are, it reveals the truth. Yeah. And even with Conan, like I just finished Conan Without Borders. Oh, what I needed. Yeah. But he kept going up to people and being like, I have a really big penis, and like but it's someone that pushes so far on that reveals the truth about them. Yeah. Even in like a ridiculous in a normal societal way. Like, you see a guy that's fucking got a ridiculous, like, fucking car, and you're like, that guy's got a huge dick. Yeah. Like, that in itself, like, because they're going so against the truth, they reveal the truth. So I think it's
that's an interesting way of seeing it, yeah. So that... And like, I will say that, like, especially, like, I respect Dave Chappelle so much, because he is, like, he, like, just treats everyone the same. Yeah. You know, like, he'll make these jokes... And, like, it pisses everybody off because, like, oh, like, it's homophobic, or, like, you know, you can't say that about trans people. But it's, like, actually, like, you know...
Like, no one's off the table.
Like, and that's what he said in this most recent one. He was all like, look, I don't get it, but, like, I don't think you should be treated any differently than for me. And I think you deserve, like, the same rights as me. And I respect you, and I'm going to love you and stuff, but I don't get it. Yeah. You know? And, like, I respect that. Same with... That's an ideology that Key and Peele have.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah. That like, if they exclude anyone from, like, making fun of them, then you can't make fun of anybody or anything. Right. Like, so everything has to be on an even playing field. Yeah. But yeah, like, Dave Chappelle is just so brutally honest with, like, the way he sees the world and the way that things are, and his opinions and stuff. Like, I have a lot of respect for that, because, like, there's a lot of pressure from comedians to be, like, PC and to, like, because it costs people jobs. Like, that one guy didn't get that position with SNL because of his podcast were, like, saying racist stuff.
Oh, about Asian people.
Yes. And, like that's an entirely different conversation and scenario. But, like, there's a lot of pressure from, like, being afraid of, like, saying something and, like, getting backlash. And then, so, like, everyone has, like, this pressure to like, be funny, but it's like you also gotta, like, you know, be mindful and stuff.
And I think, like, at least in certain scenarios, I don't know in particularly with that one, but like people that, you know, I'm totally like joke about everything. I think in certain ways, depending on how you've constructed the material, where that idea of, like, you know, the truth still comes out no matter what. Yeah. That, like, however you're portraying, talking about, I don't know, like, people that aren't like you, like Asian people, gay people, or whatever, is that no matter how you've constructed the joke, the truth of how you really feel about the situation always seems to come out. So, like, there'd be people, like, say, who did open mic nights that I was, like, teching, and some old white man was trying to make a joke about Colin Kaepernick. And it was like, you know, certainly there's a way to do it where, you know, you could, be funny. Of course, there's other people who would be like, you absolutely cannot, joke about that off the table. But the way that he did it really revealed how he felt, which was the All Lives Matter thing and the, pro-Trump thing, because his joke was about peeing on Colin Kaepernick. Oh. So it was like, there's a way to talk about this in a constructive way, but how you've constructed the joke has revealed us how you really feel.
You're right.
Like, there's certain, comics that you look at, like, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of someone who people think is really funny, but, like, they're Jeff Dunham. There's, like, that's probably a good example. So Jeff Dunham does that puppet that's,
he's a ventriloquist.
Excuse you. It's the one. It's like it's a skeleton, but it's like a terrorist.
Ahmed?
Yes. So something like that thrived in the early 2000s because of 9/11.
Yeah.
But how he really constructed the joke and how he really, like his feelings really come out. Of like how he feels about this community. If he's really hard at hitting into these stereotypes.
Yeah.
But there's people like Dave Chappelle, who, nothing is off the table and he can have a constructive conversation about, say, white people, right? Like on the Chappelle show, there are so many jokes about white people. And it's like, but his feelings about, I need a joke about everybody and no one's off the table really come out. So I think that there's like a constructive way to do it. And we could tell. Like on the Joe Rogan podcast, there was a comedian that was talking about, like he wouldn't book female comics unless they blew him.
Oh my god, disgusting.
And how, like, I, hearing it and then seeing the footage, like, how he joked about it is, like, the truth kind of comes out a little bit of, like, oh, you're kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And, like, some stuff, like, people are really, like, analyzing Chris D'Elia's stuff, and they were like, well, he played a pedophile on TV. And I was like, I'm not going to knock anybody for, like,
playing a character.
For playing a character, for sure.
Yeah.
But, you look at, like, I don't know, he did some podcast episodes where he was, like, making certain jokes, and I was like, I think in a lot of ways, sure, we need to joke about everything. We need to talk about everything. But how people construct their joke, their truth comes out, no matter what, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I think that might have been the situation, I don't remember, with the SNL thing.
Yeah.
But that's why people like Chappelle aren't canceled, because, the truth of how he really feels comes out, but we're still having the commentary.
I think that's a really good point that you made. Thank you for saying that, Mary.
But yeah, Sarah, quickly, before you have to fill the meter on your car, do you have anything you'd like to promote? You have a podcast that's
I do have a podcast. It's called Giggle Bucket. It's a sketch comedy show. It's available on Apple Podcasts and also on Spotify.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, you can find me, on Instagram and Twitter, just like Giggle Bucket Podcast, or just the Giggle Bucket. And yeah, please check it out. It's funny. Mary's on it. She does voice acting, so support your fearless leader.
Oh my no.
Yeah.
And we'll put all that in the description of the episode.
Thanks, bro.
Podcast is sick. And all your other personal socials as well.
Yeah, I'm hilarious on Twitter.
TikTok, fucking funny, bro.
TikToks are great.
Alright, sick.
Those POVs.
Oh my god. You see this bitch's POV, girl. Nah. Sick. Alright, so follow around that. Tampa Talk Illustration of the drill. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Instagram more so. Tampa Talk W Mary on those. If you have some thoughts on this and you want to share it with either Sarah or myself, I don't want to speak for another woman, but I'm sure we'd be open to it. But, email me, tampattalkwithmary@gmail.com. Keep on bleeding. It's going to be okay. Fuck sexist, racist motherfuckers. Acknowledge systematic racism and systematic sexism. Be a better person. Don't be a dick today.
Yeah, and wear your mask.
And wear your fucking mask. My God. I'm not even going to go on this. Okay. Wear your fucking mask. Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Tampa Talk with Mary.
Bye.
Bye.